And now to share my appreciation, I would like very much from the audience, a man.
Me.
A man that will dance with the girls.
In 1960, Anita Ekberg chased paparazzi through the streets of Rome with a bow and arrow. She actually shot 2 of them. But that wasn't even the most shocking night of her life. There were secret affairs with married billionaires, a husband who swung from ceiling lights on their 3rd night together, 104 takes of a scene so brutal she demanded a $500,000 settlement, and a relationship with one of Hollywood's biggest stars that helped destroy his marriage. The photos from her prime tell one story. What happened behind closed doors tells another one entirely. Anita Ekberg came into the world on September 29, 1931, in Malmö, and the house she grew up in held 8 children under one strict Protestant roof. She was the 6th, and the weight of that family order followed her everywhere. Her father Gustav worked as a warehouse boss and also as a harbor master, and Anita adored him while slowly growing distant from almost everyone else in the family. Their faith shaped the rhythm of the home, shaping what she could wear, how she could speak, and what she was expected to become. Her mother watched every move with suspicion, and her desire for modeling was treated as something sinful. That tension kept growing, and every small dream she whispered felt like it hit a wall. She wanted movement while the house demanded obedience, and soon, the clash between her hopes and her parents' rules pushed her toward the idea of leaving Sweden altogether. It felt like she had to step outside to breathe. As she reached her teenage years in Malmö, she reached for modeling like it was a door out of that heavy atmosphere. She quit school and took jobs in fashion, even though her family called it improper work. Each picture taken of her at 16 and 17 widened the distance between her and her parents because they believed she was abandoning decency. Their disapproval only pushed her further. Modeling was the first thing that let her feel seen instead of scolded, and it gave her a sense of independence she had never known inside that crowded house. She kept posing, kept earning small paychecks, and kept ignoring angry comments at home. That choice became her first real act of rebellion, something that carried her forward long before Hollywood ever knew her name. She learned early that stepping toward her ambitions meant stepping away from comfort. By 1950, when she was 19, her mother suddenly encouraged her to enter the Miss Malmö pageant. The same woman who had condemned modeling now handed her this path, and Anita accepted it with mixed emotions. When she won that crown and advanced to Miss Sweden in 1951, everything moved quickly. She represented Skåne and Malmö, and when she won that national title, the prize was shockingly simple. 2 dresses and a trip to Atlantic City. Nothing more, nothing glamorous. Still, those small rewards opened a giant door. She boarded a plane out of Sweden for the first time in her life, holding 2 dresses that suddenly meant more than gold. Winning Miss Sweden changed her entire world because it sent her far away from the restrictions she had grown up with. Even though the prize looked modest on paper, the shift it created set her on the road toward a life she had not dared to describe out loud. When she reached Atlantic City for the 1951 Miss Universe contest, she stood among contestants, but barely knew 5 English words. She held on to phrases like ja, no, hamburger, el Morocco, and ice cream, repeating them as if they were lifelines. Still, she walked into that room with such presence that photographers circled her instantly. Modeling agent Eileen Ford saw something memorable in her and taught her a signature look by telling her to pout like a fish, insisting all good models looked like that now. Anita learned fast, and soon the cameras couldn't stop clicking. Even though she didn't win the crown, she became one of the 6 finalists and ended up featured in Life magazine. They called her the most photographed girl at the pageant and praised her sunny face and striking figure. She stood there without the language to answer simple questions, yet somehow she became unforgettable to the American press. Universal Studios signed her soon after, offering the typical starlet contract given to pageant finalists. She arrived in Hollywood with no training and almost no English.
How did you get in?
That doesn't matter. I ask only that you listen to me.
You're mad, Roman.
But the studio handed her a long list of lessons. She was supposed to learn acting, diction, dancing, fencing, and horseback riding, yet she ignored everything except the riding. She spent her days galloping through the hills while skipping class after class, claiming later she had simply been spoiled. Her early checks turned into indulgences. She bought a mink stole and a white Jaguar and drove around the city smiling at jokes that weren't funny. Howard Hughes grew obsessed with changing her face and her name, but she refused every suggestion. She believed the name Ekberg would matter if she succeeded, and if she didn't, nothing would matter anyway. She held her ground, even when others bent easily under pressure. That defiance showed itself again when Universal expected compliance and polish, and instead found an actress uninterested in training. After 6 months, the studio dropped her. It shocked them because she had looks that Hollywood normally turned into gold, yet beauty alone meant nothing without discipline. Her measurements of 40, 23, 37 caught attention, but her lack of dedication pushed her to the studio's exit door. She took small roles like the Vesuvian Guard in Abbott and Costello Go to Mars in 1953, hardly noticing the humiliation because she still thought Spotlight would find her. John Wayne later offered her a new contract at $75 per week, and she accepted because she needed any foothold she could get. The blow from Universal stayed with her, but never softened her attitude. She simply kept moving, the same way she had walked away from her parents' rules back in Malmö. Her distance from people and her cool demeanor earned her the nickname Anita Iceberg among the Hollywood press. Reporters found her aloof, and rival performers thought she was arrogant. Singer Evelyn Treasure Chest West became convinced Anita had insulted her figure and retaliated by throwing tomatoes at her during a nightclub act. The scandal worked its way into gossip columns, making Anita seem unreachable and unfriendly. She never tried to charm the journalists, and that lack of effort kept her boxed into the image they created. In an industry where smiles kept careers alive, she refused to play along. Every cold glance turned into another headline calling her unapproachable, and the label Iceberg stuck for years. Even so, she carried herself as if she didn't need the press, though their resentment followed her into every studio lot. Her fortunes shifted again in 1955 when Bob Hope toured Greenland to entertain American servicemen and brought her along. Cameras captured her beside him, and he praised her beauty in front of thousands of soldiers. The coverage exploded. Newspapers rushed to write about her, and this attention outshined every small movie role she had ever done. Suddenly, she was not a forgotten contract player anymore. She was the blonde who brightened the Arctic for troops watching from the cold. This was the first televised USO event, and her presence became the story. That spotlight pulled her farther into Hollywood's view and opened new doors she hadn't been able to push open herself. John Wayne noticed the way audiences responded to her and signed her for $75 a week under Batjack Productions. He gave her a speaking role in Blood Alley in 1955, though the role required her to play Wei Ling, a character altered so heavily she barely resembled herself. Her hair was dyed, her figure hidden, and her costumes reshaped. The role was awkward, but important, because it finally put her voice into a film instead of leaving her silent on the edges of the frame. Wayne's belief in her gave her a platform, and she stepped into it because she understood second chances rarely came twice in Hollywood. Howard Hughes, still in control of RKO, helped her again by securing her a place in Back from Eternity in 1956. Even though their romance had ended, he believed her presence could bring something valuable to the film. RKO carried weight, and appearing in a serious thriller built her resume in a way Universal never had. Hughes still faced contract battles and legal tangles across the industry, which meant he couldn't give her more roles afterward. But this one film helped her move towards something bigger. It pulled her from the sidelines and placed her in front of audiences who expected more than beauty. That same year, Paramount borrowed her from Batjack for War and Peace, filmed in Rome with Audrey Hepburn, Henry Fonda, and Mel Ferrer. Anita played Hélène Courrigan, a seductive figure meant to contrast sharply with Hepburn's innocence. Her heavy accent forced the studio to dub her lines, but her physical presence left an impression across the globe. The film premiered on August 21, 1956, and earned multiple Academy Award nominations. Her role helped cement her as an international figure, something more than a forgotten Swedish model trying to find work. Paramount then pushed her forward as their answer to Marilyn Monroe. They called her Paramount's Marilyn Monroe, highlighting her measurements of 38, 24, 36, and her height of 170 centimeters. Director Frank Tashlin joked her curves broke laws of gravity and credited her appeal to what he called the immaturity of the American male. The studio cast her in 5 films in 1956, pairing her with stars like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. This flood of publicity brought her immense fame, but it trapped her in one role: the sex symbol, the blonde bombshell. She later said every director wanted her to repeat the same character again and again, leaving her little room to grow. Her fame in Hollywood often mixed with scandal, especially through her affair with Tyrone Power. It began around 1953 while he was married to Linda Christian. Anita visited him on sets, joined him on tour for John Brown's Body, and even met his family in Cincinnati. Linda Christian later described the affair without naming Anita directly, but she made the truth clear. By 1956, when Power filmed the Eddie Duchin story, Anita appeared in New York to be near him again. The affair lasted several years and played a role in the collapse of his marriage. She moved through Hollywood romances quickly, dating Frank Sinatra in 1955 and attracting men like Yul Brynner, Errol Flynn, and Rod Taylor. Her relationship with Taylor became a storm of passion and public arguments, drawing paparazzi to every corner of their lives. Her figure and her love life kept her in magazines constantly. Rumors even tied her to President John F. Kennedy. She became a symbol of desire, and the men around her kept feeding her legend. She admitted later that many of her biggest scandals were planned. In London's Berkeley Hotel, her dress burst open in front of photographers during what looked like a wardrobe accident. She later said it had been staged to sell pictures and keep her in the papers. She understood attention better than most actresses of her era and knew how to manipulate it. She played the publicity game long before it became expected. Her most secret relationship unfolded with Gianni Agnelli, the billionaire owner of Fiat. He was married to Princess Mirella Caracciolo, which meant Anita could never be more than a hidden lover. They met in hotels, and eventually Agnelli rented her a villa in Rome so they could meet more freely. Photographers who managed to catch them together had their images shut down by his lawyers. One night, he arrived at the villa unexpectedly and found her with actor Rick Van Nutter, the man she would marry in 1963. That moment destroyed their hidden world. Anita Ekberg married Anthony Steele on May 22, 1956, in Florence, Italy. And from the very first moment, the marriage felt overwhelming. The ceremony took place at the city's town hall, but it did not feel intimate or calm. Crowds flooded the square outside, pressing in so tightly that police had to step in just to keep order. Photographers climbed over statues and shouted for attention, desperate to capture the perfect shot. The wedding quickly turned into chaos, something reporters later compared to a traveling circus. Anita and Anthony were pushed from pose to pose, changing outfits again and again, smiling until their faces ached. Even before the day was over, Steele looked drained. He told reporters he was glad it had ended, and admitted he was exhausted. On what should have been the happiest day of his life, the fatigue already showed cracks that would only grow wider. After the wedding, Steele made a choice driven by love and pride, but it would cost him everything. At the time, his career in Britain was strong. He was earning about £15,000 a year and stood as one of the Rank organization's biggest stars alongside Dirk Bogarde. He still had 3 years left on a solid contract, yet he walked away from it to follow Anita to Hollywood. The decision shocked the industry. Powerful producers felt betrayed, especially after Steele openly said he preferred working in America. He even spoke about becoming a United States citizen, which pushed British audiences further away. John Davis at Rank was furious after years of investment in Steele's career. In Hollywood, Steele found himself idle and restless, watching his reputation fade. He later admitted a man needs work to keep respect, and the absence of it slowly ate at him. As Anita's fame grew, Steele's insecurity hardened into jealousy. He loved her deeply, but being married to one of the most desired women in the world tormented him. Men flirted openly wherever they went, and Steele reacted with fists instead of restraint. He fought photographers, punched strangers, and caused scenes that followed them everywhere. These outbursts became part of the growing paparazzi culture in Rome and helped shape the image later seen in films of the era. The violence did not stop in public. Witnesses reported physical fights between the couple, and Anita later confirmed he hit her. Alcohol only made it worse. Steele was arrested twice for drunk driving, including one high-speed incident shortly after their wedding. Anita had to rush in and bail him out while reporters waited eagerly. The marriage turned into a storm of fear and humiliation. Years later, Anita revealed just how early the nightmare began. In a 2000 interview, she described their third night as husband and wife. She came home and found Steele completely drunk, swinging from the ceiling lights, out of control and raging. He disappeared many nights, returning the next morning without explanation. His behavior terrified her. Heavy drinking was common among actors of his generation, but Steele's addiction ruled him. Combined with jealousy, violence, and career frustration, it poisoned every corner of their home. There was no room for peace. When they divorced in 1959 after only 3 years, the damage went beyond emotional scars. During the marriage, Steele borrowed $100,000 from Anita. It was an enormous sum at the time. He never repaid it. That betrayal haunted her later in life. By 2011, Anita was drowning in debt, struggling with illness, and unable to repair her villa near Rome after a fire and robbery. She spent time in a care facility and even reached out for financial help. She died on January 11, 2015, at age 83.
We learned today famed actress Anita Ekberg has died.
Marcello, come here.
This scene from La Dolce Vita in the 60s at the Trevi Fountain.
Her final years overshadowed by loss and hardship that might have been softened if that money had never vanished. Around the same time her marriage collapsed, fate pulled Anita into a role that would define her forever. In 1959, Federico Fellini encountered her near the Spanish Steps in Rome. His reaction was instant and overwhelming. He described feeling hypnotized, as if witnessing something beyond human scale. He spoke of her in primal terms, comparing her to powerful animals and natural forces, studying her features as if discovering humanity for the first time. To him, her presence was not just beauty, but something elemental. That vision came alive during the filming of La Dolce Vita. The Trevi fountain scene was shot over an entire week in March 1959, during freezing nights. Anita stood for hours in icy water, wearing only a strapless black gown. She did not complain. Fellini later said she stepped into the fountain without hesitation. Her co-star Marcello Mastroianni struggled far more. Even with a wetsuit, he drank an entire bottle of vodka to cope with the cold and could barely stand. Anita later said she was freezing and had to be lifted out because she could not feel her legs. Despite her strength, she faced cruelty on set. Mastroianni mocked her with harsh comparisons meant to strip away her glamour. Fellini's own diarist reduced her to an animal label, even while admitting she endured conditions that defeated others. These comments revealed the tension of the time, where her body was admired, exploited, and ridiculed all at once. When the film premiered in 1960, outrage exploded. The Vatican condemned it as immoral, focusing directly on Anita's appearance and the visibility of her cleavage. Their criticism turned the film into a global scandal. Some countries banned it. Ironically, the condemnation only fueled its fame. Instead of retreating, Anita fought back. She publicly said she was proud of her body and glad to show it. She called it womanliness, not shame. In an era when actresses were expected to stay silent, her words landed like a challenge. She became more than an icon. She became a symbol of defiance. That defiance erupted again later in 1960 on a Roman night that became legend. On October 19th, paparazzi photographed her kissing a married producer at a nightclub. They followed her relentlessly through Via Veneto and all the way to her villa. As they prepared to leave, Anita burst outside barefoot in a black dress, holding a bow and arrow. She had been training for a warrior role and knew exactly how to use it. She shouted for the photos and released the arrows. One struck a photographer in the arm. Another hit a second man in the back. When one tried to stop her, she attacked him with her fists. After La Dolce Vita came out in 1960, everything in Anita Ekberg's life quietly shifted, even though it looked like success from the outside. The film turned her into a global sensation, but it also locked her inside a single image she could never escape. She later admitted that life became boring after that film because every producer and director in Italy, England, and America wanted the same thing from her again and again. They all wanted the mysterious American woman who arrives in Italy. They all wanted the Trevi Fountain. That one-night scene with Marcello Mastroianni became unforgettable, but it also became a cage. Executives stopped seeing her as an actress and only saw that moment, her stepping into the water in a black evening gown, glowing and distant. Every script asked her to repeat that dream version of herself. What should have opened doors slowly closed them, and the masterpiece that defined a generation also quietly limited her for decades. As the years passed, Hollywood made its thinking painfully clear. In 1963, she appeared in the Western comedy Four for Texas, alongside Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Ursula Andress. On paper, it looked like a strong comeback. In reality, it showed how far she had fallen in the eyes of critics.
Mana, oh, niga.
Reviews focused less on her performance and more on her body. One critic wrote about her towering presence next to Sinatra, describing her gowns instead of her acting. Another dismissed her entirely by saying she was all bosom and little else. At the same time, Ursula Andress was praised for having depth, seduction, and strength in her role. The contrast was cruel. Both women were famous for their beauty, yet only Ekberg was reduced to measurements. In one stroke, American cinema stripped her of credibility as a serious actress. From there, the slide became harder to stop. Through the 1960s and 1970s, the prestigious European films faded away and were replaced by obscure and exploitative projects. Her American career dried up, forcing her to work almost entirely in Europe. In 1972, she appeared in The French Sex Murders, a giallo film where critics described her role as forgettable and her presence as tired. Then came Killer Nun in 1979, a shocking turn that few could have imagined years earlier. She played a morphine-addicted nun driven into violence and obsession. Later still, she appeared in films like Bomba in 1982. These movies used her name to sell shock and sensation rather than talent. The fall was complete. The woman who once stood at the center of Fellini's artistic vision was now being pulled into projects that offered no dignity and no future. Even as meaningful roles disappeared, exploitation never stopped. In 1972, she was forced to take legal action against an Italian magazine that published nude photographs of her without permission. The lawsuit exposed a harsh truth. While the industry no longer wanted her on screen, it still believed it owned her image. Her body was treated as public property, something to be photographed and sold without consent. The case showed how actresses whose fame was built on beauty were left exposed once their careers slowed. By fighting back legally, Ekberg tried to hold on to some control, even as her power in the industry vanished. Her personal life offered no refuge. On April 9, 1963, she married Rick Van Nutter, a former CIA agent who played Felix Leiter in Thunderball. She hoped this second marriage would bring stability after her divorce from Anthony Steele in 1959. Instead, it ended in disaster. When they divorced in 1975, after 12 years together, Ekberg claimed Van Nutter had taken everything from her. She said he emptied her bank accounts, sold her villa and its contents without telling her, and disappeared with her Ferrari, her yacht, and even a Chinese junk she owned. The betrayal crushed her emotionally and financially. What little security she had left was gone, leaving her vulnerable at the very moment her career had already collapsed. Time moved on, and the world that once adored her grew distant. Federico Fellini brought her back briefly, not as a star, but as a memory. In The Clowns in 1970, she appeared as herself, a quiet reminder of a past era. Then, in 1987, 27 years after La Dolce Vita, Fellini reunited her with Marcello Mastroianni in Intervista. In one deeply emotional scene, they watched their famous fountain moment projected on a screen. Tears rolled down her face as time confronted her all at once. They recreated the scene only as shadows, accompanied by Nino Rota's music. It was beautiful and painful. She was no longer leading the story. She had become a symbol of what cinema used to be. After more than 50 years and over 50 films, her career ended quietly. In 2002, she officially retired after appearing in a small television production called Beauty Center. Before that, her last film role had been in the obscure The Rogue Dwarf in 1998. There were no awards, no celebrations, no grand farewell. The silence was heavy. The actress who once defined glamour faded away without recognition, working her final years in minor European productions as the industry moved on without her. Then life turned harsh in ways that felt almost cruel. In December 2011, when she was 80, she broke her thigh after being knocked down by one of her beloved Great Danes. She spent 3 months hospitalized in Rimini. While she lay there, unable to move or protect herself, thieves broke into her villa and stole jewelry and furniture. The robbery went unnoticed for some time because she was still in the hospital. Reports revealed she was already struggling financially before this happened. After the theft, she was described as destitute. Her accountant had to publicly ask for help, exposing just how far her fortunes had fallen. As she tried to recover, another blow arrived. Her villa south of Rome was damaged by a fire. Repairs were impossible without money she did not have. In desperation, she applied for assistance from the Fellini Foundation, the very institution tied to the man whose film made her immortal. The irony was sharp. The foundation itself was struggling and could offer little support. The woman who helped make Fellini famous was left waiting, uncertain if any help would come at all. Her final years were spent in a wheelchair at a senior living facility near Rome. The former Miss Sweden contestant, once known for towering beauty and movement, now depended on others for daily care. Her lawyer revealed she survived on a very small pension. When she died on January 11, 2015, at age 83, at the San Rafael Clinic in Rocca di Papa, it was said she did not die in poverty, only because she technically still owned the damaged villa. It was a hollow detail. She could not live there. She could not afford to fix it. She lived simply, quietly, and far from luxury. Her death passed with little noise. Obituaries focused almost entirely on the Trevi fountain, reducing a 50-year career to a single scene. There were no major tributes, no grand retrospectives. The industry that once chased her image moved on without looking back. The fountain she made famous continued to generate millions through tourism and fashion. In 2015, Fendi donated $4 million to restore it. In 2016, models walked across it on glass, recreating her moment. Tourists continued to wade into the water, chasing her shadow. Anita Ekberg received nothing from it, no residuals, no royalties. She once said she could no longer stand watching that scene. She had seen it too many times. In the end, her ashes were sent back to Sweden. The woman who symbolized excess, beauty, and freedom died quietly, nearly forgotten. Her life revealed the dark truth behind glamour. Fame without protection fades fast. Beauty without respect becomes a trap. Anita Ekberg gave the world an image it will never forget, and the world gave her almost nothing back when it mattered most.